25th of the 11th, 2025. The time is 17 minutes past 8. And that means, as always, one thing, that there are a multitude of F1-centric threads at which we need to pull. In the first instance, we'll talk about Checo Perez saying that he knew that the next person that came into that Red Bull seat alongside Maximilian Verstappen, for some say soon to be 5-time champion, would always struggle. We'll talk about Christian Horner, the rumour that he's going to appear up at Aston Martin. Holy Trinity, can you spell? Max, Adrian Newey and Christian Horner. Aston Martin, potentially. And then we'll talk about Lando Norris. We'll talk about Lewis Hamilton. We'll talk about all and sundry. But in the first instance, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let's talk about the power rankings, because they've been issued. And this is what they say. Maximilian Verstappen, 9.8. How very dare you not give that dude a 10? What more do you want from that dude? 9.8. But again, it's an aggregate, isn't it? An average of all of the ratings that all of the F1 accredited journals. Not everybody can be right. Do you know what I mean? Some people have to be wrong. Antonelli gets a cheeky 8.6, which I think he's worthy of, notwithstanding the fact that he struggled in qualifying. God tier performance, 48 laps on them their hard compound tyres, and never make no difference. A 0 pit stop strategy. Bravo, Kimi Antonelli, in his maiden voyage. Rookie season settings. Norris gets an 8.2. We'll talk about Lando, because I don't think it was a bad drive from Lando, but I think there were critical mistakes made at critical times. Again, this is the difference between the very good and the great ones, is it not? Oh, and by the way, speaking of great ones, Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton was spotted out enjoying himself. And you know what? In a previous life, I would have gone ham on Sir Lewis Hamilton. I would have said, what's he wasting his time for? Why doesn't he focus on F1? Why doesn't he realise that he needs to be in the sim? Surely you want to be focusing on your craft in Ferrari's hour of need, that they won't want to see those pictures at Fiorano and Maranello, erstwhile, all the while leaving. You're a gazillion points down the road from Charles Leclerc and the car is SH1T, that won't go down too well. I would have said all that in a previous life. But you know what? Lewis Hamilton, approaching the ripe old age of 41, can do what he wants. There is life outside of Formula One. And I think by dint of these photos, Lewis Hamilton partying with some of his mates, that he is preparing for that. Oh, and by the way, cheeky timetable courtesy of our mates over at Sky Sports F1, for which I pay £90 per month in subscription fee, but I digress. Practice, 1 o'clock, and then straight into sprint qualifying. And again, this is all British time, British bias settings. 1300 hours is practice 1, the first and only practice of this race weekend. Round 23, Qatar. Again, probably important to give you some context. Oscar Piastri struggles in these Grand Prix, low grip circuits, all of Abu Dhabi, Mexican Grand Prix, the Brazilian one too, Las Vegas, not tracks around which Oscar Piastri has ever gone well. However, this one's different. Oscar Piastri has a second and third around here. He's never qualified behind his teammate and therefore should go well so long as he gets the upgraded suspension geometry, etc. But I digress. Timetable time, free practice 1 and only, 1300 hours on the Friday. 10 to 5 p.m. therefore British. The sprint qualifying kicks off on the Saturday. The sprint race starts at 1300 hours British, and then qualifying kicks off, I would imagine, at 5:30 British, or maybe 1800 hours. The race will kick off. The pick to click is of course 1600 hours on the Sunday. Oh, the humanity, do you know what I mean? Championship rounds, 2 races to go, lest we forget the difference in the Drivers' Championship between Lando and Oscar and Max Verstappen. Now, on the back of the disqualification episode of the Las Vegas Grand Prix, 24 points. We've run the maths already, right? Do you recall? If Maximilian Verstappen can win the sprint and the 2 Grand Prix and Lando Norris finishes second, that will whittle down that gap to 9 points, lest we forget the 9 points that Max Verstappen gave away at Barcelona in hot-headed rage. Oh, the humanity. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to show you guys this, because Max Verstappen is now the favourite, not for the championship, but for the Qatar Grand Prix. Bookmakers say if you run a simulation of the Qatar Grand Prix round 23 100 times, that Maximilian Verstappen will win 40 of them. Oh, the humanity. Lando Norris is your second favourite. Bet £1, you'll get 2 back as far as your return, plus your stake. Lando Norris will win the Qatar Grand Prix 33% of the time. Odds makers say Oscar Piastri all the way down there in third. Oh, the humanity. Past his prologue, I think they might have their beans mixed up, getting all forensic accounting on me. Oscar Piastri, run a simulation of the Qatar Grand Prix 100 times. They say he wins 11.1% recurring. Oh, and by the way, this is where it gets techie chat. Buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride. We need to talk about McLaren and what's going on over there, because I just think, I don't know. Context is this. They've had the quickest car for as near as makes no difference 100% of the season thus far. They've been brilliant. Of course, they have the reverse tyre deg thing. That's where the tyre water joke started popping up from. They have been god tier. Robert Marshall, the last wing bender, has got his flexi wing going well. And again, you realise that they've done something sexy as far as the weight distribution in the car. That's why when you see Oscar Piastri's car, his seat, that he's got the gold bloody plating. Here's what I'm talking about here, because this is important, chat. That's what Oscar Piastri's seat looks like. Why? Well, because they've managed to front load. If the car would wear, it will wear at the front. They've done something very brilliant. And why it's brilliant is because in the ground effect cars, all of the sexy aerodynamic bits and bobs underneath the car, if past his prologue, are at the back. So therefore, if the car wears, as far as McLaren are concerned, because they've done something very clever, weighted all the sexy bits at the front, Oscar Piastri needs that, because if the car wears, it will happen at the front. Why then, chat? Why? Why did the rear wear? Why was there excessive wear as far as the planks are concerned at the Las Vegas Grand Prix for McLaren at the rear and the front? What is going on? And then you come to find out, Jonathan Noble said recently that a couple different things happened at the Brazilian Grand Prix. Most worthy of mention is the fact that they were very, very close to being disqualified. Now, people have talked, and again, shout out Natchez on the Twitters. People have been talking for the longest time. If word on the F1 curb is something in which you can be invested, Natchez says that many people, Carlos Miquel in Marca, again, all F1 journals are created equally, but some are created more equal than others, says that, quote, in the paddock, it's rumoured that McLaren would have found a way to heat the titanium supports of the plank, wearing it out, therefore, less. The FIA made several teams remove it in Brazil. It is believed they were a hair's breadth away from being disqualified already at Interlagos. Oh, the humanity. So roll this forward, then go into Qatar. What happens? The McLaren still have the whip hand as far as their lap time, their durable competitive advantage. Or by dint of this new technical directive, per se, in inverted commas, taking this stuff out potentially, are McLaren going to have to go super conservative going into race 23? That, ladies and gentlemen, is the question. Now, Lando Norris at the post-race presser started to say all of this about how I didn't have speed, I wasn't in the quickest car, etc, etc. I'm not sure if that's right, Lando. I'm not sure if that's coping mechanism. We said it a gazillion times before on here, but I will say it again for the avoidance of that. There's a very fine line between cope and delusion, especially as far as Lando Norris is concerned. Before I tell you that, let me tell you this, because this is important. We'll get to Lando and Maximilian Verstappen in a minute, because the more that I watch the footage of last race Grand Prix at Las Vegas, of course, the more that I think that Lando Norris is something's going on here. Remember, James Allen said that this championship will be won or lost in Lando Norris's head. Nico Rosberg said that. In fact, let me tell you this however, before we get to the Lando and Max Verstappen stuff, hottest topic on the docket. Checo Perez has come out and he said a couple of different things that are worthy of notes. Checo, for the longest time, has had an axe to grind, right? Keeps talking about woe is me, perfect victim settings, that nobody can drive that Red Bull alongside Maximilian Verstappen, giving credence, fanning the flames of conspiracy as far as whether Red Bull, the bulls that are red, build their car around the house that is Verstappen. Checo Perez said this, and I quote, "What happened with Red Bull, I knew it was the best thing that could have happened to me. Getting paid off to the tune of 20 million US dollars. No kidding." Sherlock, he continues, quote, "When we reached an agreement, I remember I was with Christian already saying goodbye. I told Christian, thank you very much for everything, and I'm sorry for whoever's going to come here next." Well, he's not been I've talked very disparagingly about Checo Perez in the past. His last season wasn't great. He didn't cover himself in glory. You remember when Charlie Mavija, the 51% owner of Red Bull GmbH, rocked up to Grand Prix on a couple different occasions that season. Checo Perez decided that that was the best time to yeet it into the barriers. How very unacceptable. Checo was a gazillion miles behind. The Checo of 2021 is a thing of the past. Like he left his prime on that Abu Dhabi track that day in 2021. For that guy, the Mexican Minister of Defense would never rear his head again, in my humble opinion. And of course, he deserved to get sacked. Roll the dice. If it's a Yuki Tsunoda who then doesn't go on to perform, whatever. But there was more risk from keeping Checo Perez as at the end of his tenure as a Bulls that a red driver than there was from keeping him. Roll the dice on a Lawson or a Lindblad or whoever. Tsunoda, San, it doesn't matter. Bring Danny Rick out to retirement at this stage. It doesn't matter. Of course, Checo Perez revenge in 2026 when he will be on the grid, and in all likelihood, Christian Horner will not owe the humanity. But to that point, Christian Horner, some are saying, will be on the grid. There is a rumour that Aston Martin are currently, as of the time of writing, in negotiations with the one that they call Christian Horner to bring him back to replace the one that they call Andy Cowell, which seems like insanity. Andy Cowell's only about 5 minutes in that job. Stability, some say, yields lap time and therefore advantage and all championships. So how comes you keep doing this magic roundabout, Lawrence Stroll, as far as your human resource is concerned? Now we know something dodgy is going on in the background as far as Aston Martin Lagonda. It's restructure, it's issuing shares and placements and bloody all this other chaos is going in the background. But that's the car company. Surely, Lawrence Stroll, you understand that you need to do one of these. That an F1 team and its human resource needs to be as stable as the underfloor of a ground effect car if indeed you want that team to win. So why replacing Andy Cowell already as team principal? Oh wait, non-rhetorical question. Well, of course Christian Horner is brilliant. Christian Horner is brilliant, and I understand potentially Lawrence Stroll for the longest time has always said that when he gets passionate about something he wants to win. Ipso facto, the £350 million factory. So too, by dint of the aforementioned desire and passion comes the £50 million as far as infrastructure capital spend. Wind tunnel. That, ladies and gentlemen, is techier than techie things. Lawrence Stroll said also that he's looking to build a Galacticus as far as his human resource over at Aston Martin. And if indeed you want to build Galacticos, of course you will need in the first instance Adrian Newey. But let's say you were trying to do the Bulls that are red reunion. You would need yourself a Christian Horner there. Of course, you'd have to throw some equity at him because he's already said to a gazillion different people that he's not coming back if he doesn't get that. He wants stability. He wants in. He wants to have a seat at the strategic objective table, C-suite, exec level bods, not just a CEO or team principal, but a shareholder now, just like Christian's old mate, Toto the boy who cried wolf. But then Gary Anderson writes that potentially if you're going to do a Red Bull reunion, then you've only got 2 of the 3 requisite jigsaw puzzles in Newey and Horner. Who, ladies and gentlemen, is your third? Of course, potentially Max Scott ends up over there in 2027. That, ladies and gentlemen, would be chaos. But if we're talking about decision making, potentially not the most likely outcome is Maximilian Verstappen going to Mercedes by dint of their god tier power units. You know, Petronas are going to build themselves, help to build a brilliant power unit by dint of their market leading sustainable fuel. Oh, and by the way, I've got to talk about this Lando Norris circumstance. I've been watching obsessively the press conference, the move into turn one, and I'm trying to dissect through it. Or this will be studied, chat. Telling you in years to come, irrespective of which way the championship of the drivers' variety, where it goes, whether it's Lando, Oscar, or Maximilian Verstappen go, irrespective, they will study the racecraft of Maximilian Verstappen and his ability to get into his mate's head. Let me tell you what happened. This is techier than techie things. On the formation lap, there was all kind of brinksmanship that not too many people are talking about. Of course, Lando Norris was asked by his race engineer, Will Joseph, to do burnouts, do 5 of them, cooler climbs, and that makes sense. Lando Norris did do, in stark contrast to what Mark Hughes says, legend of the race, we are the race. Go back and watch it on your multi-viewer and you will see that Lando Norris did do the 5 burnouts. Props. He understands. But again, there's always been a lack of racecraft as far as what Lando struggles with. He's spinning for very many plates. If he's got to tinker with the brake bias, as an example, before a race restart, he can't do it. He struggles. He does it at the wrong time. Time and place is what Lando Norris struggles with. And if indeed you're to become a God tier driver, then you need to nail that. You need to be able to multitask. Surely there's a gazillion different toggles that you need to operate in the car. You need to know where they are, lest you want to be a George Russell yeeting it into the gearbox of a Fernando Alonso at Australia in 2024. You've got to have these things at the tip of your fingers and know, moreover, how to conduct your activities when you're racing a Maximilian Verstappen. Here's what happened, chat. On the formation lap, Max decided that what he was going to do was like Lewis Hamilton would do to him in 2021. Anytime, go back and watch if you don't believe me. Anytime in 21 when Max Verstappen will put it on pole, Lewis Hamilton would slow the pack up massively, as near as makes no difference, breaking the rules without breaking the rules. Remember, it's got to be 10 car lengths between first and second. You can't concertina the pack up. But Max Verstappen, realising what 10 car lengths looks like, used 10 car lengths. Lando, mate, you want to go and do your burnouts and run up, mate, and spend all your time in your grid box. If you want to do that, then go ahead and do that. And Maximilian Verstappen took the piss. Not my words, Lando Norris's. Here's what Lando said when he was over the radio. And again, he's watching Max Verstappen in his wing mirrors. He says, during the formation lap, the Max Verstappen is taking the piss with how big a gap he's leaving. It's way over the allowed allowance. Come on, he's just, Lando Norris's words by the way, he's just taking the piss. It's 10 car lengths now. Well, Maximilian Verstappen is going to, listen, if there is a millimetre of advantage to be gotten from gamesmanship and brinksmanship, we are Lando Norris for the avoidance of doubt in the championship rounds. What do you expect him to do? He's Max Verstappen. He has 4 championships already to his name. Of course he's going to line step if indeed he thinks that's the play. So that's what he does. Max Verstappen makes sure that Lando Norris gets to the grid and has to wait all of the burnouts ultimately for nothing, because he's waiting and his temperatures, both tyre and engine, are cooling down by the millisecond. Lando Norris as well, as far as his mental space, is already impacted. Max Verstappen is now, before the race, just after the formation lap, living rent-free in Lando Norris's head. Lando Norris 2.0 that we saw go put in the very first sub-70 second lap at Monaco. Lando Norris 2.0 is no longer in attendance. Exit stage left. This is Lando Norris 1.0. Lando Norris indeed dusting from Stranger Things, because he's more concerned about what Max is doing. And even with that, credit to Max Verstappen, credit to Lando Norris, Freudian slip settings, credit to Lando Norris, because and still, even with that in his head, Max Verstappen, he's taking a bit, he's still off the line, goes and does the right thing. It's not a bad start, and then he does the Michael Schumacher and crowds Maximilian Verstappen on the wall. That's what you're supposed to do. Max told us as much in the post-race presser. He was asked the question, is that what you'd have done? And Max said, yeah, absolutely. You bet your bottom dollar. That's what you're supposed to do. But you know what Max also said in the presser? The problem for Lando is this. I stayed long enough in Lando Norris's wing mirrors, just long enough to where his eyes were no longer on the braking zone at the point at which he would need to brake. His eyes were on me. Imagine Maximilian Verstappen, god tier peddler that he is, Gary Kasparov of F1, planned 4 moves ahead, decided that he'd make himself big enough in Lando Norris's wing mirrors for long enough to make sure that he missed his braking point. Oh, the humanity, chat. What are we doing here? And then at the very last minute, Max Verstappen does what? Darts right. Unbelievable settings. We went through this yesterday, but I think it's a brilliant point enough. It's a brilliant piece. It's sufficiently brilliant, a piece of racecraft that it warrants going over again. Here's the line. In fact, let's listen to David Coulthard. Here's what he had to say. Let's do it.
Well, he went brave. He went hard. He tried to play Max at his own game. The only thing is he doesn't know the rules of that game, and it didn't work out for him. So he's paid the price. He's dropped back, and we've got a very tentative Oscar Piastri as well.
Telling you, chat, that's a brilliant line from Coulthard. I don't hate it. Permission to borrow that, DC, if I may. The Lando Norris tried to play Max Verstappen's game, but sadly for him, he does not know the rules. And he was so close. Racers will love what Lando Norris did in the first instance, but you can't. Close but no cigar. And let me tell you what I mean by this. This is important. Look, at this point, Lando Norris has done 1000% the right thing, because if he leaves the inside line open for Max Verstappen, then what do you think Max is going to do but weaponise inside line privilege? Of course, he's going to dive by Lando Norris. So Lando realises that he needs to close that door firmly, robustly and properly once and for all. However, just before you're about to go into the bloody turn, Lando has to realise that he can't be carrying that amount of pace at that narrow angle. V-line settings, lap 1 on a fuel tank of fuel. It makes no sense. If Lando had stopped looking in his wing mirrors and just come to the right ever so slightly before he had to jump on the brakes, I think he might have made that turn. And here's where it gets techie, chat. How does this affect Lando going into Qatar? Well, if you listen to some of his quotes and his chat, I'm not sure. Lando Norris, all he did was talk about Max Verstappen in the post-race press conference. He said he got back into his old self. This is why I say disparagingly, Lando Norris 1.0. Dustin from Stranger Things. Oh, it was a bit embarrassing, really. Oh, I made a big mistake at turn 1. Oh, but we didn't have the car anyway. What are you saying, Lando Norris? You had the fastest car by a gazillion miles. That's not our fault or Max's fault that you didn't use it to its full potential. What are you talking about, mate? And then this is why you've got to ask questions about. It's not long. It is race week. So Lando's bounce back ability is what's in question here. When you go back and watch the bloody post-race presser, you have to ask the question. I'm not sure, chat, which Lando we can expect to rock up at Qatar. Unless we forget we're still in a three-man battle here. Oscar Piastri's right there as well, and he will be quick at Qatar. It's techie. It is techie. Gary Kasparov settings in Vegas. Bobby Fischer set to come up in Qatar. It's a good analogy, that too much. I don't hate it. Or Magnus Carlsen even. No jinx, says John. No jinx. Lando did well. I think he did really well. I don't think people are giving him credit, and it hurts me too. I love to riff on Lando Norris 1.0 as much as the next person, more than even, but he was really good going into turn 1. He 90% of the job was there, but he forgot that he needed to brake and assume the geometric racing line before turning in. And that's schoolboy, isn't it? McLaren is the real embarrassment of Las Vegas. Go on then. Let's talk about Zach Brown et al. Listen, I saw Zach Brown zooming around a museum looking at an old McLaren. I think they're at risk. Let me tell you that the biggest drop of the ball, the biggest faux pas in this McLaren equation would of course be Zach Brown and Andreas Stenner. Not long ago were they doing this big god tier level PR charade, Shakespearean levels of false seeming, telling all and sundry that they would rather lose the championship than adapt. They would rather lose than pick favourites. Then understand that in F1, sometimes you've got to build a championship campaign around one driver. 24 points adrift is what Oscar Piastri... And who knows what's going to happen with Oscar Piastri, right? You think Oscar Piastri will stay? If he interprets that Lando Norris, that his is McLaren's team, that Zach Brown thinks that Lando is his, but what do you think? You think Oscar Piastri is going to stay? Why would he stay? In his prime, he doesn't want to be another modern day Jean Lazy and give his prime years to a team that doesn't have any faith in him. Why would he stay? It's going to get, I swear, I cannot wait. Listen, hurry up, Qatar. It can't come soon enough. But the question that I'm asking as far as Zach and Andrea Stella is, they need to realise at this juncture, championship rounds, only 2 to go, that there is strength in adaptability. Yeah, you said all this, but the problem is they can't double down. They don't want it. They're too stubborn to be seen to be backtracking. They've said all these gubbins about rules of engagement, papaya rules, etc. That we will never. We've got 2 number 1 drivers. No one will be a number 2. That I'd rather lose the championship than change that. That 2007 was a thing, and if 2007 happens this year, then it happens. I'd rather that than all of the eventualities that would sprout out from picking favourites. Zach Brown's words, not mine, chat. And that, whilst it's admirable and whilst the words read really well on paper, there is honour in that. Ultimately, there is a difference in theory as versus practice when it comes to Formula 1. What are we doing here, Dylan? Go on, stop out. Go on, I'm going to address this, Dylan. You've got me, chap. I just spotted that out of the corner of my eye, and I'm well prepared to go scorched earth today. Dylan, what is doing? Stop hyping, Max. Dylan, I'm going to get your thing and I'm going to read it out. I'm in the mood. I mean, you've caught me at a good time, Dylan, I promise you. Go on then. Dylan says, watch. Dylan says, please, Cameron, can you stop this nonsense? Stop this overhype, Max, all the time. Lando is winning this and you know it. And you know this, so stop all the hype. Listen, Dylan, why don't you stop gaslighting, chap? When did I once say that Max Verstappen's going to win the championship? Would I bet against Max? You can bet against Max the Dylan, if indeed you want to. If that's the hill upon which you want to unalive, then that's up to you, the Dylan. Do you know what I mean? Lando is winning, while your crystal ball is much less murky than mine. To say that Lando is not the favourite would be disingenuous, because he is indeed the favourite, a big fat odds-on favourite. Run the remaining 2 races 100 times, and odds makers say that Lando Norris wins more than 50% of the time. So if you're picking favourites, Dylan, then 1000%. But to say that you know that Lando will win, mate, anybody that thinks they've got a crystal ball that's clear and unmurky, I think you're a snake oil salesman, Dylan. I just think you started watching F1 the other day to talk with such certainty, but I digress. You know what I mean, Dylan? What are you talking about? Overhyping Maximilian Verstappen. It's not my fault, Dylan, that you just started watching F1 this year or last. I don't know what to say to you. The Max factor is real. It's truth, not overhype. Oh, Dylan, now Cameron gonna go Scott. You know what, Umaj? Nah. It's too early in the week. We've got to save our energy. Do you know what I mean? Harvesting. You know what we're gonna do, because it's gonna be a chaotic week. Dylan, let's revisit this time next week, chap. Because I feel like sometimes in F1 anything can and does happen. Did I use a fastest car by a long shot, Cam? I did indeed, EasyG. Around Las Vegas. Go on then, EasyG. Let's test this thesis, because I'm here for this. It's got to be a conversation. Let me say this as well for the avoidance of doubt. You guys that show up and have this conversation, even the Dylan, like, so long as if it's banter and it's disagreement, so long as it's respectful, we're here for that. That's the point of the bloody channel. EasyG, to your point. Did you see Lando Norris's final lap? Did you see how many mistakes in sector 3 he made? And yet, instead, he was a gazillion seconds down the road from Max. It's like, what? Switch them, ECG. I would love to see Max Verstappen in that. Why don't we do this, Zach Brown, Lando Norris? Why don't we give Max Verstappen that McLaren for the final 2 races, and let's see what happens. Do you know what I mean? I just want to see. Just playing hypothetical games. Just for fits and kicks a snake or... I know, but to predict the future too much. The Dylan, why don't you tell me what are the lottery numbers for this week as well, mate? The UK one. Like, if we're predicting futures, then how? Teach me. The Dylan. The McLaren was holding a candle to that Red Bull in Vegas. Behave yourself, Easy G. No, Easy G, don't, mate, don't. Lando was right there at the dynamo. But listen, Lando tried, and this is the Easy G, I'm telling you, you've highlighted a point here. When Lando starts talking about, oh, we didn't have the car wasn't quick enough. Like, Lando, did you see qualifying? What are you talking about, chap? Did you see qualifying? Like, Lando would have been at least a second down the road had he nailed sector 3. He didn't even think that he was going to be on pole, but the car was so fast, it took him to pole. The car was incredibly quick. Even then in the bloody final stint, Lando was super close to him. I'm telling you, I don't even understand. Yeah, John, let them post. Sometimes you got to have a conversation. It was a rocket ship, John. I'm telling you, I don't even know. I can't even argue anything. 3/10 in quali, Dustin. But no, Dustin, if you see the final sector of Lando, do you remember Lando came over the radio and he was like, oh, what happened there? Was that pole? Like, because he made so many mistakes in sector 3 and he was still 1,000 gazillion tenths down the road from Max Verstappen. Race pace and true, Easy G, you've got me guilty as charged, mate. Race pace and quali is different. They are separate entities, but yet and still, it's no, nobody's going to tell me that McLaren wasn't the quickest on the grid. I can promise you, Cameron, that Max won't win this championship. Dylan, Dylan, why don't you say this, mate? Listen, this is important here, and I just want to be precise with the language. I'm Grice's razoring you here, Dylan. I think I know what you mean. I will translate for you. What you mean to say is you think that the most likely outcome is that Lando Norris will win, and that's we can agree that he's the favourite, an odds-on favourite, meaning that if you run 100 simulations of the next 2 races, that Lando will win more than 50% of the time. If you want to, I think that's what you're trying to. I think that's what you're trying and failing to say, Dylan. If that's, we can agree with that. But if you're going to say that Max will not win, definitely with certainty, then I know. Then that's you're selling wolf tickets here, mate. You're selling wolf tickets that I don't think your ASS can cash. The Dylan, sadly. Bro's 24 points down from 104. People have no shame or integrity witnessing greatness, then turn a blind eye. I mean, we can do one of these if we want to. Are we going to start talking about Lewis Hamilton being the GOAT as well, just like Mama Cameron does? On paper, RB21 is the fastest car, but completely undrivable by anyone but Max. It's a good shout, Miami. Facts. Michael, what did Michael say? I missed it. Easy G. He's the soup, the appetizer, the main course, and the tiramisu. This go on then, Jack. Marquez just okay, we're gonna have to talk about this. Pico, man, techie, then techie things. Marquez on the race podcast. The race do like a similar to me and Mr. Wins, a friend of the channel, legend by the way. Probability. There you go, Buddha boy. You've got it. The race gods won't allow cropped sweater to be champion. Yeah. Maybe not. He doesn't have Max in there. It was a good shout, Easy G. You make a good point. So, here, as we round third, I want to share this with you. Again, remember I said that all F1 journals are created equally. Some are created more equal than others. Marquez of the race has a penchant for sometimes. This isn't me disparaging Marquez because he's a far better journo than I could ever be. He's the one that bloody understands what the split turbo hybrid is doing, and Mercedes hadn't even spoken to him. He's got this mind that's brilliant. He's levels. But Marquez is also the guy who says that like Kimi Antonelli is half a second quicker than any other F2 driver on the grid. Well, how did that go in your 1 year in F2, Kimi Antonelli? He was not evidently half a second quicker than anybody, even in a private test around Silverstone. Half a second is embellishment. That's what's the word? Availability heuristic. That's just like you're poking the bear, trying to make a narrative and create a story. And sometimes you've got to do that as a journalist. I get it. However, I'm surprised that many people don't notice why Lando was quick in quali. They ran a lower car that helps a lot. In the wet, park firmer. It's a good shout, Gideon. Park firmer, they can't change the ride height for the rate. It might be a good shout, mate. But they were marginal. Gideon, if you're just coming in, far too kind, mate. If you're just coming in, we talked about the ride heights and potentially them doing some dodgy things with a view to levy some tax avoidance of the design philosophy kind. We're going to say something. You guys have maybe lost my train of thought. What were we saying, chat? We're going to make a point here. The GoTS channel, I appreciate you, Fiat. I've lost my train. Look at that. Great Goku, you're a legend. Right, since I lost my train and I was about to make it. Oh, there we go. User, you're a legend. User was right. Kimi gapped Behrman. Carver's trash. Okay, look. So Mark Hughes said on the race, they do a wrap-up show where they post-mortem for all of that weekend's Grand Prix and new ones. It's really, really good. It's one of the best. I've got to give them some credit, to be fair to them. On there, they have Hughes. If Mark Hughes isn't there in person, you're a legend, games and music. If Mark Hughes isn't there in person, he'll do like anywhere between like a 60-second wrap-up. Here are the pertinent narratives and here's what happened. This week's, he said words to this effect, and this is where it gets techie, chat. He said words about Lando Norris was asked to do 5 burnouts, but he only did 3. So I put this forth to Mr. Windsor in our conversation on Monday. And Mr. Windsor worked upon my assumed information on the assumption that I'd gone out and done the fact check. I hadn't fact checked this because it's Hughes in, and 9 times out of 10 I defer. You can trust Mark Hughes' word. He's probably not the GoTS, but he's a very good journo. If you go back and watch the formation lap with your multi-viewer and check the revs, you'll see that Lando didn't do. And you know what? Sometimes you've got to common sense check things, right? Because I'm thinking if Lando only did 2 or 3 burnouts, why was his start so good? It wasn't perfect, but I mean to get to the bloody to hold off Max Verstappen, like he had to get a decent start, and that start we were drowning in glaze. If that start didn't look like a start of somebody who'd only done 2 or 3 burnouts. Anyway, go back and you can see on multi 2 things you can go and do and fact check this, which is what I should have done. I've got to take some. You can't trust easy. If you go back and check out multi-view, you'll see how many burnouts that Lando Norris did, and it wasn't 3. He did all 5 burnouts. What are we doing here? And then if you go back and check the bloody, okay, so you can debate the extent to the burnouts or whatever. But if you go back and look at the onboard on F1 TV Pro, he didn't do 3 burnouts. He did 5 burnouts. So a friend of the channel, Mr. Windsor, was like, Cameron, he did 5 burnouts. What are you talking about? And again, I say all that to say this, like trust but verify, right? All F1 journos are created equally, but some are created more equal than others. That's why at the start of the F1 hour with Mr. Peter D. Windsor, I know some of you guys don't like it, and it's overly verbose and effusive of its praise. But I'll always say that Mr. Windsor, do you know what I mean? The goatiest of all goats to have ever go. You have to. It would be disingenuous at this stage for me not to. I would like to see Max have Russell, Leclerc or Oscar as a teammate. No, it's a good shout, Surf Sauce. And you might get your wish in the next 12 or 24 months at Mercedes, the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth. Maybe. Perhaps. If Toto, the boy who cried wolf, gets his way. Can you imagine, chat? Max and George. Oh, the humanity is too much for me. I cannot cope. I'll spontaneously combust if that happens. I will spontaneously combust. But I digress. You guys have been legends, one and all. I appreciate each and every single one of you for the support and the watching and the debate. And even the Dylan. Look at me, I can't even pronounce your name. Even the Dylan for the questioning and the respect for debate. Because what is F1 if not a back and forth, a conversation? This is F1 barbershop talk. You guys are legend. Don't buy wolf tickets and don't believe any snake oil salesman between now and next time. You guys are legends. I appreciate each and every single one of you to the moon and back. Prosecution rests. No further questions. Your Honour.